Salute Knicks Nation. The NBA playoffs are here, and Coach Nick is with us to break it down. As always, the best in the biz. Coach Nick, great to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I mean, I was up really early dealing with dogs waking me up, but then I just figured I'd start working and doing videos, and I've been doing almost one a day. And it's hard, man. The first round's a grind, I'll tell you that.
It is, yeah. The scheduling's been a little bit funky. Would love to catch as much as I can. We're keeping an eye on the Nuggets series with the Clippers right now, and of course the Golden State Rockets later. Will hopefully be done by then, so we can tune in. But Knicks Pistons, right? As a neutral, there's a lot of people talking about how fun this series is coming into the series. We'll break down most recently Game 3, but what's been your observations of the series so far?
Well, I tweeted out last night after watching the game, or was it? It was last night, right? What is time? Um, that Jalen Brunson is what we call a closer, and it's kind of a pleasure to watch. And we'll have to get into a little bit of how he's playing and what he's doing, and the general state of the NBA and how it's enraging a lot of fans, it seems. But I gotta tell you, like going back and forth and seeing him and Cade go at it. And I had this weird thing on my channel with my live shows about Cade. I did a video on it too, where I know it's a Knicks pod, but like the interesting thing about Cade is that I was going through his footage doing a breakdown, and I noticed like he just wasn't really finishing that well at the rim. And it turns out that of the 37 players that averaged at least 5 attempts in the restricted area this season, he's 37th in field goal percentage. So that's last. And my podcast partner was like, "Well, he's a top 15 player. He's the MVP, this and that, whatever." I'm like, "You can't be in that conversation if you don't finish at the rim." And but we did see some finishing. He was hurting the Knicks a little bit around the rim a little bit, or turning some of those into like jump hooks, which is probably a better idea for him as well. So I've really enjoyed just kind of watching Brunson and Cade kind of going back and forth and trying to establish who's the man. Now Brunson's got more of a pedigree as it is now anyway with his experience, and so that's been pretty fun.
Yeah, that was definitely the key matchup coming into the series. I think it's lived up to the hype. Brunson, well, campaign as a closer in game one, and Brunson helping out. Game two, we'll talk a bit about that and the criticism coming Brunson's way. But the Knicks made a key adjustment in game three, coach. What did you see as the biggest, best adjustment the Knicks made to get success in game three?
Well, I have to imagine part of it was, trying to make sure Cat was more involved. I got to go check the box score, but my memory was that he disappeared in game two. You wouldn't even necessarily know when he was out there, and that was really troubling to me. And I think generally overall, the Knicks offense hasn't really been great. I haven't liked from a coach's standpoint, five-man, unit moving together like five fingers on a hand. I haven't really seen that. And they were more than happy to kind of just evolve into sort of ISO and let Brunson cook. But I felt like they did a better job of then getting Cat back involved, and he had a big game. Well, how many points did he have? 31. Oh, are we?
Yeah, 31. Yeah, 31-11, 31-8 and 2 to
Yeah,
bring this thing up.
yeah.
Yep.
So that's obviously huge. They need to have him involved. He probably, is a little bit more active on defense when you keep him involved on the offensive end and he's sort of focused that way. So that helps. But, again, this is not a kind of Thibs defense that you're used to seeing. It's definitely a little bit more porous than, some of his elite defenses in the past. So, they're going to have to kind of do it by any means necessary. And the funny thing about like the Cade thing is, so Cade is very good, and he's a top, I don't know, 20, 25 player in my mind. But I think a lot of the improvement ends up coming from, in terms of the wins, is like the roster. They went from what they had last year, which wasn't great, to adding like just solid veterans who kind of know how to play. And that really helps. Schroeder really helps to have him on the team, right? And he's been a guy driving a lot of that and hurting the Knicks. So that really helps Cade. Beasley coming off the screens is shooting. I got to look what he's shooting in the series, but he shot like, high 40s, I think, for the season. So when you watch a lot of Cade's assists, they're like, he passes to the wing, and then Beasley's coming off a pin down full speed, having to hit a, somewhat open three. Like, the work is being done on Beasley's part, less so than on Cade. So, at any rate, so it's been really fascinating and fun to see that because, again, the Pistons, at the very least, deserve a little bit of success after having been through the wilderness for, I mean, I don't know, is it, 15 years? When's the last time they even won a playoff game? So that's been a really interesting storyline altogether with that. And, I don't know if the Knicks thought that they were going to have such a dogfight on their hands, but I suppose if you have Oscar Thompson on your team, it's gonna devolve a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's definitely been a good test for the Knicks because they lost the regular season battle. There was a lot of different factors, back to backs, and Knicks missing some players. However, I think if you just looked at the stats, a lot of people weren't looking at the last 50 games of the season. The Detroit Pistons were ninth in net rating in the league. So the Knicks are up against a top 10 NBA team. I don't expect, I never expected this to be a cakewalk. I think there was a possibility of five if they won the first two games at home, but they failed to do that. But then they've taken back control now, winning game three. So I think it's all on the line in terms of game four. I think if the Knicks win game four, to buzzer beater's question, and welcome in chat, smash that like button and put your questions in for Coach Nick and myself, and we'll hopefully get to as many as we can. But yeah, if the Knicks can control game four, the early desperation, the crowd's going to be crazy. I think it could be over in five, but I predicted six, Coach, because I think the Knicks just haven't been able to, uh, you know, take momentum and really, destroy an opponent when they need to. They do let opponents hang around a bit. I think that's been a little bit of a product of the defense lapses in 3-point shooters, letting them get loose. Tim Hardaway got loose early in game three.
Yeah.
Beasley fortunately couldn't catch a rhythm, and it's kind of making me think like, is are we due for a Beasley game?
For sure, that would be a thing you'd be definitely worried about. I mean, was it any surprise from Knicks fans that Tim Hardaway Jr., was on fire in the first half of the game and then couldn't come through at the end of the game? Like, I'm not a big Tim Hardaway Jr. fan, I guess what I'm saying. And by the way, I interviewed him. He's a terrific guy. I just got concerned when, and I think people would recognize this from the Knicks time too, is that I just don't. I think his shot selection tends to be less than optimal, right? And so, a lot of them are heat checks when he's not hot, and just kind of getting him up to get him up. Sometimes that's how I feel, unfortunately, with him. But that's a good thing because the Knicks can amp up the pressure on defense down the stretch. I wouldn't probably have him in crunch time if it were me. Unfortunately, Ivy went down and for the year and on that terrible play from oh yeah, what's his name? Cole Anthony took him out, and that's too bad. Although they played a lot better after he went down, interestingly enough. But the guys that you have to be really concerned with are Schroeder. For whatever happened in Golden State, did not work out at all, and this is his third team this year. He was having trouble fitting. The guy knows how to play. He's played in all those FIBA games too, which are really harden your psyche. So that's another interesting thing. And I think that I made this point on Twitter also earlier today. I think Brunson, they asked him about all the minutes that they're playing. And I think that there is something to the notion of when you play all those minutes in the regular season too, and you're in shape, right, mentally and physically to handle this. And if you aren't broken down and injured by then, then you might have an advantage.
Yeah, that's a great point. I feel like the schedules really helped the Knicks with the 2 days rest between game two and three, three and four. We don't really get that throughout the regular season, and I think the minutes have been as I predicted. I think Mitchell. We'll talk a little bit about the Knicks options with Mitchell Robinson and Cat. We haven't seen that enough, but it just comes down to Tibbs's love of Josh Hart,
Yeah.
coach. I think that there was two big factors in game, well, three big factors in the Knicks' loss to game two. Was Brunson wasn't moving the ball enough down the stretch, or Cat wasn't aggressive enough, demanding the ball. And I felt like Josh Hart played a little bit too much. But the Knicks corrected that. They got Hart into the action more. He was setting ball screens, coach. He was bringing Duran, his man, into the action and forcing it. And Hart was playmaking, 9 assists. But the big thing is that the Knicks played with a faster pace,
Oh, did they,
coach.
what are the numbers for the
Yeah.
pace? You know?
I don't see specifically the possession battle, but the Knicks won points in the paint. They won fast break points, and they won second chance points. So I'm pretty sure they would have won the possession battle. But they did lose the rebounding again slightly, although it was a lot closer than it was in game two. But yeah, something tells me with Mitchell Robinson, his minutes, he's questionable, by the way, for game four with an illness. It doesn't appear to be too concerning, as they say, illness, but hopefully he's good for tomorrow. He wasn't able to practice today, but yeah, he just doesn't want to play Mitch and Cat for any more than 10, 12 minutes,
Yeah.
15 minutes. We haven't seen that enough, and the Knicks have been losing the rebounding, so that could be a key for Detroit if they want to get more threes up.
Yeah, we have to discover whether or not Thibs makes those adjustments with the lineups. I'm trying to go back through my hard drive in the past, in the days of the past, because he doesn't always make adjustments like that. He kind of believes in the system and sticks with it, which is a commendable thing as well. But you know what? Like my mind is, I don't think he tends to have. Right? Am I crazy? Sort of like wacky. All of a sudden, we're going to play a guy in the game four that we hadn't played much. Like he doesn't usually radically depart from that, right? And I
Yeah.
agree. I think Mitchell Robinson gives the defense an anchor behind Cat that they need, that they don't have when Cat is playing center on defense.
Yeah, it's a bit of push and pull because Cat had success with the 3-point shot
Hmm.
in game three because of the faster pace. So you bring in Mitch and you might lose a bit of that. And it goes back to what you said earlier. I just don't feel like this roster is a quintessential Tibbs roster. He's
Yeah.
literally coach all season. He's been trying to make the best of what he has. And I feel like he's been deviating from some of the principles that he hasn't utilized in the past few seasons, such as hard hedging. Usually it's a fight over the screen or it's a switch. Now it's literally cat hard hedging on every single Cade pick, and the Knicks have had some success, but then trying to scramble and fight back to their matchups, and the Pistons just haven't had enough talent to really exploit that. If it was against Boston, they would be killing that. I feel, yeah,
Yeah, they'll be hitting short rolls, and then KP or Horford, those guys really can kill you. Cade isn't really great at that. He's not going to skip the ball. He's not like the kind of Luka guy. So like he can get assists. He gets 9, 10 assists a game, but like he's not throwing a 35, 40-foot skip pass to the corner for an open three. At least I haven't seen that unless I'm missing it. And those are the things where you can continue to load up and get success out of. That's why I feel like it's the release valves. Cade's gotten the good numbers as well, but I don't know. For me, the more profound effect has been guys like Schroeder, and then even what Beasley's doing coming around. By the way, the pace, I have the numbers. They won the game one with 100.6 pace, which is really fast. Then they lost game two at 92.3, which is a really big drop. And then they were 97.7 for the game three win, which again that's 5 possessions more than the game two, which is that's a pretty nice distinction there. So clearly, as of now in the small sample size, yes, they want to be able to push the ball more and take advantage of that and get them. I think part of it also has to do with decision making on the Pistons side, making them have to speed up those decisions, and they could probably get some more mileage out of that.
yeah. I feel like that can work in the Knicks' favor in terms of attacking, getting downhill with Josh Hart. If they want to put Duran on Josh Hart, the Knicks did a fabulous job adjusting with getting Hart handling the rock a lot more, facilitating, pulling Duran out. Isaiah Stewart hasn't been a factor in this series. It's looking bleak in terms of him playing in game four as well. He's questionable. If Mitch doesn't play, but Beef Stew doesn't play, I think that'll kind of cancel each other out. But yeah, to my point, I've got a great question in the chat. It's about, I guess, mindset. And there's a few layers to it, Coach. Angel says, as a coach, how do you convince Cat to attack the paint, especially in the second unit when they were looking for him to dominate, but he was hanging around the perimeter
Yeah.
with the guards?
I suppose the convincing part is, make sure you get him on the block, and you have obviously a couple different plays where they cross screen and he comes across the low block and they can feed him. So you have to call those. Listen, the game is fast. Like for instance, even with the Lakers last night, right? The game plan should have been to attack Rudy like they did in Game 2. I did a video where I showed that it was their best thing that they did, and they don't do it at all. Like I know Luka was sick. But I wonder if part of it is like the game gets going fast. All of a sudden, this is happening. Somebody gets in foul trouble, whatever, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm in the fourth quarter, and we haven't executed the thing we were supposed to do from the get go. So I hate to think because all those coaches and they have all this analytics and they have all this data and they're ready to go, and then things get thrown out the window for a lot of reasons. So that can happen, especially if you want to play flow basketball, where you're not calling out plays every single time down. But that's on Brunson, part of it. But it's also on Cat to command it. And I feel like Cat would probably respond if you got a little bit more in his face, kind of grabbed his jersey a little bit and said, get down there, do this. We need you down there. He is the kind of guy that could kind of wander and get lost a little bit in his feelings and sort of just blend in, and then you're not getting the Cat that can dominate a game. Certainly they should be dominating the Pistons every game. Like we've seen a little bit, and so I think it's you got to get on him early and sort of work on it during the off days, and if need be, you have those. I know that they have a couple of those plays that get him on the low block. That should probably get him going because once you start scoring down there, draw a foul or two, now you can kind of start there. Then you fly out to the top, set a screen, pick and pop, and now that loosens up the three ball.
Yeah, that's great analysis as always, Coach. I agree. I feel like me personally, I always put it on the point guard. The coach can't really dribble the ball and jump on the court. They can give out the plans and the plays, but I feel like it basically ends with the point guard because you should understand if my big guy hasn't touched the rock for a minute,
Yeah.
and yes, I love Brunson being aggressive, but Cat's been that guy where he's just a great team player. He'll defer. He deferred to Anthony Edwards. He respects Brunson and his ability to close so much that I feel like he just deferred, and he feels like the captain's gonna take us to victory. But that's where it sits with the point guard, Jalen Brunson. 9 assists in Game 3. He adjusted, and the plans worked out. Getting Brunson off ball. There was some great backdoor cuts. OG was a backdoor cut from Hart because they were focused on Brunson off the ball so much. So Thibs made plenty of great adjustments. But for the playoffs, Coach, I feel like mentality is key. Like you mentioned, Dennis Schroeder, Campaign had a big game in Game 1. It's those no conscience players that seem to have success in the playoffs. I feel where they've either been there and they've done that. They don't care if they miss. You
Right.
need those players in the playoff. There are talented players that are just a bit too tentative, and you have to just put that out the window and take those shots that are available.
Yeah, when I've coached teams or even consulted with teams that are in the playoff situations or one and done type of games, I always bring that up where I say it's like in the NCAA tournament you'll see it too where there's some rando comes off the bench and then hits like 5 threes and then the whole game is changed and they will go off and win. And why does that guy able to do that? Well, it's exactly that. He doesn't have any pressure on him to do anything, right? And pressure only exists in so much as you create it on yourself. So if you can not do that and focus on just being in the moment and trying to enjoy it, you probably would have more success. Then, it's like we talked about this for years now about Thibs. Would it kill the guy to smile a little bit on a good play, and just try and let that energy build? Because his body language is terrible. His body language is so sour, and he's got pros, Jalen and all the guys from college, and then everybody else, Bridges and Hart, and who else? Cat isn't like that, but OG, nothing will flaps them. They don't need that necessarily. But I also think that maybe there's something beyond what they're getting that you can maybe get out of if you could just do that. He'll never change. We know this, right? He'll always sort of, and it'll be under the guise of holding them accountable, right? And they got to play hard. We can't rest on our laurels, and I get all of that, but sometimes there's another level that you can unlock if you can get into a different frame of mind. I love to be able to see that, and that's why guys like Cat suffer. I think Cat is playing really well. He's played as well as he's probably had under Thibs, but I just sense that with his mental makeup, that he would be even better with a coach who understood how to get him in a positive frame of mind.
That is definitely interesting and a big off-season topic in terms of what's it going to take for Tibbs to to keep his job and be around. And the Knicks obviously have a great chance to close this series out early, which would be a big tick, I think, for Tibbs because anytime you can execute and win the series as the favorite is definitely something that he should be doing. The Knicks are a more talented team, but it's been challenging. What do you feel about the physicality? There's been a lot made, and we're going to talk about some individual incidents from Game Three, Coach. But just in general, I feel like the referees have been quite poor in adjusting. Where yeah, they blatantly want to allow a lot more physicality, but I feel like it's a bit too extreme, and that's why this foul baiting conversations come in with Brunson, where he's literally just getting hacked all game and has a welt on his face, but because he's not getting a call, he's forced to embellish a little bit more than just to get a call.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I did a video and I was going to fold Brunson into it because I did it on Jokic, who in game two was doing and game one doing all sorts of crazy stuff like running into a defensive player and then lifting his feet in the air and just crashing to the ground while the defender is like, this is my spot, I'm standing here. And he was getting those calls, and I was flabbergasted by that. And Brunson was doing a little bit of that as well. And it's an interesting argument because yes, what is he supposed to do if they're not going to call all the other things? Now, in the name of playoff basketball, we were all looking forward to the moment where they wouldn't be calling all the ticky-tack stuff. I suppose that the players were looking forward to that as well because they've really taken advantage of the referees without question across a lot of series. The Rockets and the Warriors is another one that's been out of control. And what's interesting is that out of that, and you can tell like they want to let them play, let the players decide the game and all that. And it's been how we've done it for a while now in terms of how all of a sudden the switch gets flipped. But then it almost feels like as the game gets that loose, then they kind of start blowing other calls that are not related to contact, like backcourt violations. Now, they didn't blow that one in the Knicks. They blew it for the Rockets. But the Knicks, and I had Chip on the referee Chip on my thing last night to talk about it, just so it's clear for the Knicks fans. There is a special carve out in the rule book in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter and overtimes where if you don't have positive position in the front court, you can go into the backcourt. And that doesn't mean anything. And then you really need to rewrite the rule. But basically the idea is if your momentum is already carrying you back into the backcourt and you have contact with the ball and your feet are in the front court, they'll let you kind of go in the backcourt. And probably because this has happened before, I got to rack my brains. These rules aren't made up. They don't just sort of randomly do it. It's usually based on a play that happened that they thought wasn't fair and they had to address it. So I'm okay with that one. I don't think the Pistons fans are still, but that's where I start to notice that the refereeing starts to falter because then they start just missing the other things, the kickballs and those kind of weird stuff that they shouldn't be because it's just like everything is amped up, right? And they're yelling at the refs every time, and now the refs are concerned that they're not doing a good job. So we got to figure that out. They got to get control, and I suspect as the playoffs go on, less and less referees are there, right? The referee pool gets shallower, and that should help. You know what I mean? It already is shallow when they start because they pair off some of the regular season referees, but we need a little more. We need to chisel off a few more and get the real veterans out there as a three-man crew.
Yeah, I feel like they're under so much pressure, and I understand it's a difficult job, but one thing I would love the NBA to do is to clamp down on the coaches complaining because I really feel like it stems from the hesitation to call a foul because of the complaining, and then the challenge call is making them second guess something.
Interesting.
I was pro challenge call, coach, but I feel like it's slowing the game down a little bit. Maybe they're taking a little bit too long. But I feel like it's making these coaches second guess calling basic fouls because one example, JB Bickerstaff just continues to complain over and over, and he should have picked up a technical, I feel,
Yeah.
after game three, and the coach should have said, look, enough's enough. Both sides were complaining, but I feel like they're allowing just a little bit too much physicality, and then they had to correct that too much, and then there was too much ticky-tack.
Yeah,
So,
no,
so
and that's the biggest complaint you're ever going to hear is that the first half is called one way and then all of a sudden it's called the other way. and that's frustrating. I mean, we're in the Rocket series, we're seeing Ime just telling his team they're not going to call it, just beat him up, basically, which I was kind of appalled by. But that's, didn't say it in those words, but that's what I would have taken if I was a player there. And let's not forget that the histrionics by a coach affects their own players a lot. And it gets them amped up and starting to complain a lot more too, and then get disconnected from the game as well. I mean, I could think about the one that everyone was really upset about with it's Brunson driving along the left side, and Thompson comes over, and then Brunson ends up sliding into the stanchion, and they're all like, "That's not a call, it's not a foul, whatever," and it's like, okay, that certainly is a call in the regular season either way, but when you go frame by frame. I don't necessarily see Brunson taking a dive. I see a right knee, kind of moving into the body of Brunson that could easily trip him and cause him to then go down. I mean, that some of these things are just the everybody is kind of up on edge as well. So not only is it the refs and the players and the coaches, but like the fans are screaming bloody murder too, because it's so such an important part of the season. And I suppose that's good. It's interaction. It piques interest. But you're right. I think it's affecting the product overall.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like Brunson is a guy who he wants to get to the rack, unimpeded, and credit to the opposition coaches. They're putting wings on him, and they've been doing that for 2 years now. They've been picking him up full court with Schroeder, with Strauss 2 years ago, Gabe Vincent, Kelly Oubre, coach. They're putting wings on him, roughing him up. But interesting, the Celtics are really complaining that the Magic really roughed them up last night. So apparently Jaylen Brown was talking about let's just fight.
Yeah.
They're just
I don't know about that either. I mean, it's frustrating to watch Jaylen Brown fumble his dribble, and then Tatum fumbles his dribble too on these multi-combo ISO moves they're trying to do out top, and then and then once the ball is loose, and then it's not a turnover, they'll get it back again. So it's weird because those two guys probably lead the league in fumbling dribble and then getting it back. So it's not you don't see it in the box score, but then then they're up on them and they're trying to get it. It's loose ball, and then there's contact because of that, and it's incidental contact, or it's they're letting them get away with that, which I'm actually okay with. Yeah, it's interesting that just about every series now it seems like they're on the verge of some sort of melee. And again, is this what we want? Is this what everybody has been waiting for? I don't know.
Well, I'm a big FIBA basketball guy because I feel like I like some of the rules where you can slap it off the rim. They do allow a bit more physicality, but even then they get a bit crazy with it. Like it's literally just a push and shove, and it's a little bit too extreme.
But they also call the technical foul on flopping certainly more than they do in the NBA in game in FIBA.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, I get it. You're fighting for your nation. There's national pride at stake, and we all seen how crazy Luka gets. If people think he's crazy in the NBA, he gets even more crazy playing for Slovenia. But I wanted to ask you about Brunson. You've done some great videos, and everyone check out B-Ball Breakdown if you haven't already, and the great videos you're dropping during the playoffs. I look forward to the next Knicks one.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a Knicks preview of Boston and the big matchup that we want to see. But all the talk, there's negativity on Brunson from the neutral perspective, but you appreciate Brunson's game a lot more than others. And I wanted to ask you, what goes into a clutch player so much? And my opinion is, from just watching Brunson, I feel like he doesn't premeditate what he's going to do. One of the reasons why he finds himself in these situations is because he keeps his dribble alive, but he's also surveying the defense all the time. He's watching what his opponent's doing, and he's waiting for a breakdown, and that's when he's precise. I see a lot of players that premeditate their move. Like I kind of feel like when Jason Tatum's going to do a step back,
Yeah.
and he's just dribbling 100 times, waiting to do that step back. But with Brunson, I feel like he's just dribbling and dribbling, and then he'll decide what he's going to do. And I feel like that's what separates a clutch player, because they'll eventually find that breakdown.
It's funny because I feel like he's got a good balance of that, because if he's not getting that breakdown when he's waiting for it, he can manufacture it as well. Like, I mean, even it was just like when he took it coast to coast at the end, And everyone thought, oh, he's just going to pull it out and like waste clock or whatever. And he just blew by the entire team and then laid it up. And it was like shocking. You're like, wait. And that was an example I thought of something where he was like, my team were like, we had momentum. We completely lost it. The Pistons have us on with our backs to the wall. And I'm just gonna end this thing right here. That's what it felt like. He had a foul line jumper as well in there. Like him and Cade were going back and forth, and Cade blinked, right? Cade missed a shot, a layup, or somewhere in the restricted area. He missed a foul line jumper. I think Brunson had hit one, or maybe it was the other way around. Maybe Cade hit one, then Brunson hit one, then Cade missed, and then Cade missed the layup. Whatever it was like kind of an interesting back and forth. And that was the whole series right there. Brunson doesn't miss. He doesn't miss those. You know what I mean? Generally, right? He really is just a guy who hyper focused, doesn't get bothered. He doesn't really. I mean, am I crazy to say he's not really up in arms and screaming at the refs? I can't picture that as much as like Luka or those guys. Is that right?
Yeah, he's not as demonstrative, but he has sort of moved into the a bit more frustrated category over the last 12 months. Before, I think a year ago, you would rarely see him. It would be all respectful talk to the officials, and he'd wait the perfect time. Like he'd wait for a timeout, and he'd go seek clarification. And it does seem like the referees have a lot of respect for his approach, but he has sort of started to complain a bit more. Maybe Josh Hart's rubbed off on him, maybe Cat a little bit, and I'm worried moving forward because yeah, you only have to look at him to see how much he's been hit. He'll usually have a nice shiner on his face. He does seek contact, and that's what I appreciate in players. You don't want to shy away from contact, otherwise you won't get to the line at all. So it is a push and pull. There are certain criticisms, like I said, I always bring up Jason Tatum, Brown. Well, Brown likes contact, but I feel like Tatum, he sizes the opponent up, and you just know he wants to do the step back.
Yeah.
Luka as well. Whereas I feel like Brunson he'll never be afraid of contact.
Right.
He seeks it, and that's where the foul baiting comes in from the neutrals.
And his he can't do the step back as easily because he's 6 feet tall, and so it's hard to get that off as it is. And so the jitterbug stuff that he does to get into the lane is the footwork's impeccable. And we talked about this before, how he turns drives into post ups. Like actually, I don't know if I've seen too many of them in this series for some weird reason. He's kind of either getting there or getting fouled or pulling up. How is he shooting from three? I'm actually kind of curious. So I have it right here. Jalen Brunson.
Pretty average.
Yeah, he's under 30%, and he's taken 24 in the 3 games. So that's another thing where if I were the Pistons, I probably would give him an extra foot and dare him to take some more of those and keep him out of the lane and see what would happen with that. It's probably a better opportunity than anything else. And then I would like I just don't know if there's a lot of adjustments going on the Pistons side either. I would like to see more either zone. I'd like to see some more doubling and just blasting Brunson, get it out of his hands. Like if I were doing that and just let somebody else make a play. Like his dude's going to make a play. I don't know. The Cam it won't be in there with him as much, but Mikal Bridges he's really good at pulling up from the mid range. Let's see it. I would like to see some more of that. That I would certainly, as a Pistons coach, want to see Mikal Bridges trying to do a pull up with somebody in his face from 18 or 16 versus Brunson doing what he wants to do and drawing fouls, getting in the lane, and causing all sorts of problems.
Yeah, I feel like if we just look at these matchups on screen, I feel like the Knicks have got the better of matchups. Like Brunson has basically got Osar Thompson in foul trouble in 3 of the 3 games.
Yeah.
Tim Hardaway Jr.'s gotten off 1 game, but OG has basically been more impactful. Cat's won the Tobias Harris matchup, 2 games versus 1.
Well, I just want to give a shout out to Tobias because they're having guard Cat. That's not really fair to Tobias, and I think he's doing okay. I think he's really as much energy as he possibly can. He's playing, he's bodying, he's physical, but the weight's got to be a big difference. The height is different. It's really unfair. Tobias should not be in there doing that, and he's sacrificing to do that. So I want to give him a shout out just because, and we'll see if he can be a little more effective on that because that's a tough one. You know what I mean?
It is, yeah, and he definitely did a good job in game 2. That his effort helped them win game 2 because
Mm-hmm.
Cat basically wasn't aggressive, forcing the issue. When you've got quote unquote food on you, guarding you, as they say. You should be aggressive in demanding the ball. But basically, Tobias has been solid offensively, but Cat's had two really good games. And yeah, in terms of Mikal, I guess Mikal's effort in game three was big time. Cade's, turned the ball over a lot. He's been probably the second best player in the series. Some might say best, but he's turned the ball over a lot. But he's been asked to do a hell of a lot: create, score, defend. The Knicks are putting him in action, which is good. And I think ultimately this series should come down to, as many predicted, the Knicks just having more options, coach, more go-to adjustments. Now, Bickerstaff made a late adjustment, but it was a little bit too late, where they put Duran on Cat because he was cooking Tobias.
Hmm.
But then Cat got going even more
Yeah.
because Duran, with Isaiah Stewart out, Cat, they don't have many options. Paul Reed is their situational big, but Cat was just in a rhythm at that point, and he closed it out.
Yeah, there is a personnel issue in this series, which is exactly why the Knicks should win the series. And obviously, if they win Game 4 and they go up 3-1, then that's it. It's over, right? I would imagine they're going to win Game 5 at home. That makes sense to me. But yeah, you have to be very concerned if they start to stretch it and they start to believe a little bit, right? Because like I don't want to, again, like I mentioned, with guys like Schroeder and Tobias Harris and Hardaway to some degree, those guys are pros and they know how to play and they've been through a lot of stuff. So it's not like they're going to roll over, but there's no question you want to stack them up versus Bridges and OG and Hart. Like that's it definitely tilts in the Knicks' favor. I do think that what's interesting about the whole defensive thing to begin with is that when you have that many good defenders in the team and they're still very average in defensive rating across the regular season and the playoffs too hasn't been better, it's just astounding to me that they can't quite figure it out. I'm not sure if it's a lineup thing or what. I mean, it kind of tells you that Cat just is not a really good defender, and he becomes the point of attack for every offense. I remember I did look through this at some point in March, maybe. I'm like, why is this? Why does a team that has OG, Bridges, Hart, Deuce, there's more. Robinson got in there later. Who else plays defense on that team? Am I missing anybody?
Hart,
Yeah.
Deuce,
Yeah.
yeah,
Even it's a
basic.
lot. It's a lot more than other teams have. And yet, I don't know what they were ranked. I think actually, if my memory serves, they ended up getting a little bit higher in the rankings by the end of the year. If it does that sounds here, I'll check real quick. But
Yeah, it was too hard to get a full read, coach, because Brunson missed 15 games a month, and the defense shot up, massively.
oh, because
Um, but
yeah,
but then but
yeah,
then they missed Mitchell Robinson all the way through till March, and they got him back as well. So it's so tough to read on what this team really is defensively when Tibbs just hasn't really
yeah.
tapped in to the best defensive lineups because it's all been trying to get a mix and match of offense, defense, and Brunson. Every team has just put him and Mikal Bridges in a ton of ball screens.
Yeah.
Bridges has never really been a full-time point of attack defender, and this season, more than any time in his career, he's been putting the most ball screens.
Yeah, yeah, because he's good at guarding Cade the most in my mind's eye. I think, right?
OG mostly, but
Oh,
yeah, a little bit of Bridges as well, and he's had the best of the Bridges matchup, but OG's definitely done well to
yeah.
slow to
Oh,
slow K down.
he's silent, but man, he is very impactful and very physical. Like you're not going to out physical him, and it's very impressive what he's been able to do as well. I'm looking at the defensive rating overall. They were this in the regular season they were 13th, which is about average, and the defensive rating was 113.3 points per 100 possessions. And if you look at how it breaks down for individual games of the series. The first game when they won was 111.4, so that was lower than their normal. And then 108 in game two that they lost in a sort of a slugfest. But then they did win game three, but their defensive rating was 118.7. So they were not nearly as effective defensively to keep them under control. And that's something to be concerned with because I don't know. This Pistons team should be able to limit them. They shouldn't get that high of an offensive rating the rest of the series, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the Knicks' transition defense, I think, has been the worst, coach. I think they're just a little bit slow getting back. Cat slower foot, or normally when he hits when he goes for a driving layup, he'll hit the deck, like at
Yeah.
least 40, probably 30-40% of the time. Cat ends up on the floor, and then you're slow getting back,
Hmm.
and most of the time he should be getting a foul, but he's a bit out of control. Hart the same, Brunson the same.
Yeah.
They've got to actually teach that in drills. If you're going up strong or whatever, also, and there's no contact, why hit the deck?
Right.
Stay on your feet because you're hurting your team, right? It's not going to make them call a foul anymore if you hit the floor.
You know what's funny is I asked ChatGPT if they could do. You don't know how much to trust them when you're asking about stats, but I said, does it seem like in the playoffs more teams are crashing the offensive boards than normal? And it feels that way anecdotally, and they pulled it apart. And if to believe them, I'm not positive, but they said that the offensive rebound percentage across the board was like a percentage higher, which is something. Because teams for so long were not crashing offensive boards. They wanted to get back and stop the break. So I'm looking at the Knicks. It doesn't look like they went up either to like try and crash the boards, but like there is something there where I think teams have finally started to realize we don't need to be so concerned about the fast break. We could still get a benefit of more offensive rebounds, which leads to the good threes that you want, and then putbacks. So, the Knicks haven't been doing it, but you know what? Like, there might be a way to do that if they get the Cat and Mitchell Robinson in there, although Cat tends to be on the perimeter. But if they can figure that out with the balance of the floor better, they might be able to hurt the Pistons on the offensive rebounds. Because again, you get into these slog fests where it's really physical, it's really hard to score. Then you kind of have to get the offensive rebounds, and then it turns into a scrum. But that's the only way you're going to win those games.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think about a change of pace guard? Because I feel like, Coach, you mentioned the possession battle earlier, and when you mentioned game one, statistically, when the Knicks went on that 23-0 run, or whatever it was, that was campaign exploding, where Knicks were getting quick action, they were getting downhill, and they just, ran the Pistons out of the gym in that run with the crowd. But when the Knicks played slow, Jalen Brunson ball in game two, the offense wasn't moving. Game three, they upped the pace again and had success. So how key is the pace?
Yeah, well, because the pace doesn't have to necessarily represent transition, right? You have pace in the half court as well, which is really important, like you're saying. It's funny because I was just at a practice and I'm working with the high schoolers about attacking on the catch. Because triple threat is dead. The way I coach basketball now, I don't want you to hold the ball. No jab steps, no nothing. Either you split your feet and you attack, you make the extra pass, you shoot it, there's something, and you have to make a decision before you catch the ball. And so obviously at the pro level, if you do that, I mean, certainly and by the way, we were doing 4-on-4 for an hour and it was amazing. It looked like these kids had never played together before. I showed them one action and it looked like Princeton offense. And they were attacking it so quickly that the defense, nothing they could do could keep up with it. It was beautiful. That's basketball. So yes, there is this notion of like playoff basketball and it grinds to a halt and we got to control the possessions. We got to hunt the matchups. Well, that's all well and good, but I still feel like, for the most of the game, you want to save that for the very, very end. Okay, great. And by the way, what happened when I started saying, okay, we're going to have a competition and we're going to keep score and the team that doesn't win has to do something they don't want to do, guess what happened? It got close to the end. We're playing at 21 with threes and twos. And, it was 17, 15, 18, 16 or whatever. All of a sudden, not a lot of movement, and it's like as they started with a pick and roll instead of like a get action or splits or all the things we've been working on that worked out so well. So I found that fascinating that there is some notion of that, and I'm sure it translates in the NBA as well. Where also there's the thing about fatigue, right? They're playing heavy minutes and they're tired. It's not easy to attack on the catch every single time and to cut as fast as you can every single time and to continue moving like that. So all those factors happen, and that's when you have to be able to tap into that extra energy you have, which the Knicks will have because they're in shape because they played so many minutes throughout the regular season versus other teams that probably don't have that. Again, there goes that to buttonhole or to bookend the discussion about the value of overplaying your players or not having minutes restrictions during the regular season. This is where it helps you if you've made it that far and you're not so banged up that you can't perform. And thank God we have, because it was a nightmare to see the Knicks break down last year in the playoffs. For a variety of reasons, and then random weird, injuries too. That's just not the way you want to, end the season. So it has been fantastic to see that they've been able to maintain for the most part all their health.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like one of your favorites, the skip pass, is
Yeah.
a is a key. You know, don't need to dribble the ball up the whole way. And I feel like opposing coaches know with the Knicks and how they guard Brunson that they always put the wing or Schroeder full court. The slower the Knicks get into their set, the better chance of slowing them down. And Brunson just needs to get off the ball from certain possessions and let Hart bring it up. Let Bridges bring it up. Let Deuce or Cam and some dual point guard lineups. I think that's one of the biggest adjustments that I would want to see Thibs make that not a lot of people talk about. Because by the time Brunson's been fighting through a full court press, he gets over the half court line at 16 seconds. Then it's a few dribble handoffs. We're down to like 8 seconds, and we're in sort of red territory. And I feel like they need to use Hart a lot more as an outlet.
Absolutely. I do feel like Brunson gets carte blanche to dictate however he wants to do it, right? If he doesn't want to bring the ball up, okay, you take it up. But there might need to be a little bit more influence by Tibbs on that for sure. And on the flip side, if I were Bickerstaff, I would double him in the backcourt and get it out of his hands and then deny him. Like, don't let him get it back. Although I'm sure they're also happy to turn him a couple times in the backcourt and wear him down that way as well. So all of that is true, and you're always a lot harder to guard when you vary where you begin the attack. So if he's in the corner on one possession, then he's on the ball on the other, and then he's in the wing the next, that becomes harder to guard and hard to predict where he's going to go. And then also it makes it hard on the help defense to know where to key on him. So all of those things are really important. That's why they're like, when you watch Steph, that's why part of his genius is that him and Kerr and then Draymond, they figured out this way of where you never know where he's going to attack from, and then you can't key on him that way as easily. All you can do is just be overly physical, and the refs are allowing that. And the refs are allowing it, on Brunson as well. The smaller guards are getting beat up in the name of playoff basketball. I know that the Warriors are complaining to the league office, and I'm sure everyone does, but. I don't know if that does anything, but we'll find out tonight in a few minutes as soon as that game starts because, it usually starts in the very beginning, right? Like the tone gets established of what they're going to allow. And there's no question that both the Pistons and like the Rockets are going to push that envelope from the first second the ball is tossed up.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, that series is about to tip soon, so we'll wrap up in a second.
Okay.
But what about this suggestion? Has this ever been posed where we get the same officials for just for that series, so that they know? Because I find it weird how they change game to game. Like game two was Jay Acosta, and there's been a lot of rumors going around and statistics that the Knicks have been awful with him, and the Knicks were awful with him, and got some poor calls. I think Zach Zarba did a much better job in game three, but then there was the blown um, situations in that one, but he got the backcourt violation correct.
Yeah.
What do you think about just designating the same crew for a series?
I mean, I have to imagine they vary it so they can avoid any notion of impropriety or gambling. Like there was an issue
Yeah,
back in the day. So if you have the same crew, I guess you could argue that they're more susceptible then to like for the influence. But I don't mind that notion. Certainly, if you're going to get a consistent whistle, whether you like it or not, right? It'll at least be consistent in theory. But that's also part of it too. It's like maybe you thank God we got rid of that crew. Like, what if you get that crew you can't stand? If it is that guy Costa, like now what? Now you're stuck with them for those 7 games. Like that might not work either. So it's probably a good idea. I mean, the guys that come up with those kind of things are pretty smart, right? And they've looked at this for a long time and they've done trial and error for decades. So I tend to side with like if that's the decision they made, they probably thought very long and hard, and maybe they had tried it in the past and realized that like coaches hated it or something like that, and they realized it was better to do it this way. But that doesn't either way. I don't think I have a hard stance on it either way. I think it could work both ways.
yeah, yeah. I agree. And just lastly, buzzer beater from the building asks us, Coach, can give us a grade for the Knicks players on the series. So we can start with the starters. How do you see sort of them, individually and versus their opponent?
Well, I mean, certainly, Jalen Brunson gets an A, I would say, for what he's doing. I mean, the numbers I have in front of me here are, almost 34 a game, right? And 8 assists. So he's just putting in work. Let's see here.
Yeah, great stat for you as well, Coach.
Yeah.
He's averaging 6.3 more points in the postseason than his season average, which is
Yeah.
currently the largest in
Wow.
NBA history.
Really interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess right because it's hard. It's harder to do that. Usually, guys don't up their the numbers that way. So he gets an A. Karl Anthony Towns because of disappearance in Game 2. You know, he's going to get dinged for that. So you got to give him like a B or B minus, I suppose. OG has been a nice surprise to me. I don't know. I feel like maybe he's more aggressive in the postseason now, or he's finding more opportunities than maybe he did in the play in my mind's eye in the regular season. What I remember from the Knicks now. Right, he's more aggressive at 18 points a game. Am I way off? I don't think he averaged 18 a game in the regular season, did he?
He was for a stretch when Brunson was out, but that's
Ah,
obviously with with the main usage guy out. But yeah, 100% OG is more aggressive, especially attacking on the drives.
yeah.
But he's been shooting the ball really well this season too from distance, which has
Oh,
been much
yeah,
needed.
he actually was at 18 exactly on the regular season as well. So good. So all right. Anyway, but it's definitely very impactful what he's doing, which is great. So I'll give him an A if we're giving grades. And who else am I missing here?
You got Hart and Bridges.
Oh, yeah. Hart. I was funny because Hart is actually she's. Sorry, he's not even taking any. That's right. I saw that he was shooting 50% from three, but I'm like, he's not even taking them now. And remember, there's a whole thing last year where he's like, I can, my wrist clicked, and now I can shoot. Remember that was like maybe right before the playoffs started, and that didn't last that long. I don't think
Yeah,
it's that well.
he had no hesitation in that series against Cleveland and last year against Philly.
Yeah,
Um, Maybe it was just the confidence that he had at that point, but he's had a pretty brutal season in terms of shooting the three. A part of
yeah.
that is on him for the hesitation.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, yeah, I can help him. So maybe I can. I tried last summer. Maybe I can get through to him this time, and I can help him a little bit because I don't think it's that hard to unlock that rhythm and change the mindset. But you got to get him a C or whatever, right? Very, very blah. And then Bridges has had a couple of moments too, where I thought like he's done really well. He's helped them. He's like saved a couple of possessions that were falling apart with his off the dribble stuff. So I'll give him like a B, I suppose. Am
Yeah.
I being too nice or too mean?
Well, I think he definitely redeemed himself. Yeah, game three. I'll probably give Bridges a B minus, C plus, and I would give Hart probably a B. I think he's copped a little bit of criticism. I think the coach just overplays him a bit too
Yeah,
much. But 100% agree with you. If you just get in rhythm and just keep shooting, you'll get into a better rhythm.
yeah,
If you constantly hesitate, your shot percentage is just going to go down.
yeah.
There's one way to get it up, which is to shoot more. I feel, which
Well,
is
especially because I'm trying to picture this if this is right, where like there are times when he's making catches where like if he were to shoot it, it probably would be the best shot they're going to get in that possession, and by passing it up. Now the shot clock's getting shorter. The defense is now getting more aggressive. It's like it's just when you get that shot, you got to take it. You got to be that guy. And if you're not, then it gums up the works a little bit here. So we'll see. I bet you'll have a game right where he ends up hitting he like multiple threes in a game. I bet you will see something like that.
Yeah, against Boston, he's definitely going to have, and that's to your point, the biggest reason why he needs to shoot because they're planning to sag off of him, and you have to make the other team pay. Whether you hit it or you don't.
Yeah.
If the opponent knows he's never going to shoot it, that's even better. It's like okay, I can help off you even more. You're just looking to pass.
But he also knows that if you get that kind of space, you can cut. And guys like Cat and Brunson are good at hitting him on those cuts where he's got a lot of space because they're ignoring him. And you're ignoring him and you're turning your head and you're loading up, and then you might have that moment where you forget. Or you lose track of Hart, and that's where he'll get you on that. So there are ways to mitigate that as well. And then him being a playmaker, like you said, like him bringing the ball up, him running a pick and roll or two, and getting downhill where he's getting assists is also another thing. So, this is a real interesting test to see how they come out in Game 4 because this is their chance. There's enough evidence and data right now, like you've already laid it out too, really well what they need to do. And is Thibs going to be able to A, recognize that, which I think he will, and then B, communicate it well enough where then they can execute that. That's going to be key. And if not, then they'll just have to rely on the Jalen Brunson show. And we've seen that he can beat the Pistons doing that. I don't know how deep you can get doing that with him. Like what we saw in Game 2, right? That's going to be tough. but they can overcome the Pistons without question. But then, I don't think it's good enough for the Celtics. You're going to have a well-oiled offense to be able to get enough shots.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll have plenty of time to break that one down, hopefully when it happens. But yeah, 100% agree. I think with Hart facilitating, the only thing is that, if they do body Brunson up and he can't get the ball back, that's when you're fighting with danger. Where, late shot clock, Hart's got the ball, it's like a grenade. But if
Yeah,
he's facilitating early in the shot clock, then that's great. Brunson will get the ball back. But
that's what
yeah,
we call them grenades when you throw a pass to a guy with like 3 seconds on the shot clock. It's
well,
like,
especially with this extra physicality, coach, because you literally, like what I'm sure why Steph Curry is complaining is, you can literally just grab the guy's jersey and he can't get loose. So I can understand why Brunson doesn't want to give the ball up because like it's tough getting it back when you're an undersized guard. You
yeah,
know.
I know, and I wish as an underside guard myself or whatever I was, I completely sympathize. Although I probably was the defender that would play a little bit like that. I wouldn't grab jerseys, but I was pretty physical myself, so I like that as well. And like the Thompson twins, I love those guys. I love the way they play. And they're going to be just absolutely terrific players in the league for a long time. And if they learn to shoot, look out. They're going to be all stars and more.
Yeah, and my quote is to always say to the team on offense, use the defense's force against them. So if they're keying on one or two guys too much, then okay, where are the other guys? Cut back door, set a couple of double screens, free them up, those kind of things. Use the force against them
Now you're just
if they're
describing different
overplaying.
offense than Phil Jackson. It's exactly
Yeah,
what
well,
they did against the Knicks, back in the day. So that, and then it's all built in the triangle. So I listen. If they want to go back, Brunson would be fantastic in the triangle offense with
oh,
a tweak here or there to get him as a single guard on top. But yeah, I mean, it's the system that you see. Like, the Warriors still have some of that where they'll start this possession with an action that doesn't get anywhere, and then they immediately flow. It's like that low post split. That's a triangle offense thing, right? Where other teams just kind of like dribble the ball back out and go into an ISO, and then you get a really tough shot. Whereas when there's a flow there and you can go from one to the next and everyone can, break into an action on the same page, that you can't be as physical as you want to. It's really hard. Once you try and get there, boom, they're already backdoor, they're already cutting, they're moving, all those things. So, maybe maybe the triangle offense will come back ultimately in the face of what we're seeing in the playoffs now.
yeah, we'll see little bits and pieces like we do with Tibbs occasionally.
Yeah.
But look, I know we've got to get to the Rockets Warriors series, but really appreciate your time, coach, as always, and hopefully we can catch up again later in the playoffs as the Knicks hopefully move on from this series earlier.
For sure, for sure. I mean, I feel like they're going to be able to at least get to the second round, and then you think Tibbs keeps his job if he loses in the second round of the Celtics?
I think it's always a chance he loses his job, but I think it's more likely to stay if he gets past this series and at least the second round is competitive. If
Yeah,
they're not competitive in the second round, then there's a great chance that he'll be replaced, I feel.
I agree. I agree. It's got to be competitive. If it's not, then look out.
And you look at, I mean, the evidence. The young Magic got a game off the Celtics. The Knicks haven't been able to get a game off the Celtics. Well, they should have, as you widely documented. They should have fouled when they were up by three. But yeah, the Knicks just have to prove that they can hang and compete with Boston. Win a game in Boston or win two games at home, and then I think that might be enough for Tibbs to stay. Because if they can make some roster tweaks, I think they would probably prefer continuity rather than just the upheaval. The Knicks are a more stable front office than the Grizzlies and the Nuggets and all these teams that have fired their coaches. I feel like it starts with the front office.
Yeah,
If they have confidence in the coach, they will resume.
for sure. Well, you know what? We got to get to the end of the Clippers game too. It's going down the wire here. 4 point game.
Okay, let's do that. But yeah, appreciate everyone in the chat and smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and B-Ball Breakdown, the best in the business, Coach Nick. And we'll talk to you tomorrow post game.
You
Salute
got it.
everyone.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Coach.